Next speaker is Todd Henry. I did not need the phonetic spelling for that, Todd. Pretty easy. Todd is the founder of Accidental Creative, where he helps leaders establish practices that bring out the best of their teams. Todd's the author of 4 books, most recently, The Motivation Code. You can see we have Mad Powit's motivation is a key theme for us. So we wanted Todd to come here today to talk about some research that he's done that led to that latest book. Todd's going to present findings on his research and key motivational drivers you might consider in leading and running your teams. Todd?
Well, hello, my brilliant friends. It is great to be, I guess, with you. Is that the right way that we talk about this now? It's great to be with you today. I'm very excited to share with you something that, frankly, I haven't shared with really any audiences to date in this format, which is the latest research that my colleagues and I have been doing about what truly drives us. We're going to talk about motivation and very specifically some new insights into what it is that drives behavior, what it is that drives engagement and deep satisfaction in life and in work. This is going to help us as professionals, of course, but it's also going to help us as leaders, as managers, as people who have to collaborate, frankly, just as human beings to understand what it is that drives the people around us. So I started really thinking about this topic a couple of years ago, pretty much in depth. My family made a trip to a place called Mammoth Cave to do some camping. And as part of our preparation for the trip, my wife told me that our family was going to be making a little side excursion over to a place called Horse Cave, where, as she put it, we were going to do a little light rappelling. Okay, now, the reason my wife had to tell me we were going to do some rappelling is because she knows that since before we were married, I have been deathly afraid of heights. So in my mind, I immediately, my heart began racing. I became terrified. So she knew she kind of had to prepare me. So she said, but listen, the cliff that we're going to do is probably some little kiddie cliff because even the kids can do it. It's probably some little 10-foot little bloop and you go down and you're fine. And then, by the way, it ends in a pizza buffet. And if you want to make anything okay with me, just tell me it ends in a pizza buffet and we're good, right? So anyway, the day came for us to make our little excursion over to Horse Cave to do our rappelling. And so, here we are going into the Horse Cave Museum, which, by the way, just a little side note here as well, if you're going to try to attract people to your place of business, you may not want to put pictures of crickets and bats and snakes on the sign. I'm just saying, maybe not a good idea, but we weren't smart enough to see past that. So anyway, we go into the American Horse Cave Museum and they start putting on the gear that we're going to use to go rappelling. And I remember thinking, this is an awful lot of gear for a little kiddie cliff. We had helmets and we had harnesses and it was like a pretty significant amount of gear. And I'm starting to get a little nervous. And then our guide gave us a bit of information we didn't previously have. He said, oh, by the way, this is not in fact a little kiddie cliff, but it is an 84-foot sheer rock face that then emptied out into another 180-foot drop into Horse Cave. All right. So I had a little sphincter clenching action going on in that moment, for sure. A little nervous at that point. But then the second piece of information they gave us is there is a lightning storm on its way in right now to Horse Cave. And so we're going to try to get as many people over the cliff as we can, but we may not be able to get everybody over. I know we're really disappointed about that, but we may not be able to get everybody over the cliff, but we're going to try to get as many people over as we can. Right. So you can imagine in that moment, I developed a new strategy. I was going to be the most polite rappeller in the history of Horse Cave. No, please, you go first. No, please, you go first. After you. So as we walk out to the cliff, I'm the last one in line thinking if anybody's not going to go over because of the lightning storm, it's going to be this guy, right? Well, that worked for about 5 minutes as we were walking our way out. But then I looked over as we were getting ready to go down the cliff, and my daughter, Ava, who you saw on the previous slide, was standing there with her eyes wide open, so excited. She was first in line, so excited to go over this cliff, so excited. And the guide asked in that moment, he said, you know what? I love it that she is so excited to go over the cliff, but we really need an adult to go first. Could we have an adult volunteer to go first? In that moment, it was like a universal referendum on my manhood. It really was, right? There's no way that I'm going to stand all the way in the back of the line while my daughter gleefully goes over the cliff like a mountain goat. Not going to happen. So I volunteered. I said, listen, I want to go first. I want to die first and die with honor. That's what I want to do, right? So I go to the front of the line and they hook me in, and I start leaning back, and I lean over the cliff, and I start going down the cliff. And just as I get about out of earshot from the guide, he makes a pronouncement. He said, "All right, ladies and gentlemen, apparently the lightning storm is coming in quicker than we thought." And I'm thinking, no, right? And what he meant was we're going to have to hurry and get everybody over. And we did, and it was fine. Everybody lived. It was wonderful. But here's the interesting question. What was it in that moment when I was standing there seeing my daughter first in line and they asked for an adult volunteer? What was it in that moment that motivated me to volunteer, to act in spite of the fact that I was terrified to go over that cliff? Why in that moment did I step up in spite of the fact that everything inside of me was saying, just stay where you are? You see, when we talk about motivation, what we're talking about is what animates behavior. What is it that drives us to act even in the face of potential discomfort? What is it that drives us to act even when we don't necessarily like the tasks? What is it that animates us and drives us at the core? Why are we motivated? Because we're all motivated. By the way, people say that they're not motivated. You're motivated to do something. You're always motivated to do something. Even procrastination is motivated by something, right? So what is it that is motivating us? Well, this is an interesting question, but motivation is only one piece of all of the pieces that we have to pay attention to if we want to be successful. So let's talk about how motivation fits into the bigger picture. Where does motivation come from? Okay, there are three pieces that we have to pay attention to as we think about how we engage in our work. To be successful, we need skills, of course. In order to succeed, we need the right skills to be able to do the job we're tasked with. We also need experience, because with the right skills, but without the right experience, our work isn't going to bear as much value as it can if we have skills and experience. But the missing and often overlooked piece of this is motivation. We need skills, we need experience, and we need to understand what it is that motivates us in order to bring the fullness of who we are to what we do every day. When we have skills and we have experience, but we lack motivation, when we don't have the drive to do the work that we're capable of doing that's in front of us, this is going to be grind work. This is going to do if we have to, but we're not going to spend discretionary energy on that work. We're not going to bring discretionary value to the table. Of course, we can have all the experience we need, the context we need, and we can have the motivation to do it. But if we lack the skills, then our work is going to be poor. We're not going to be able to deliver on our expectations, of course, right? That's intuitive. And of course, just to close the loop, we can have the right skills and the right motivation. We can understand what drives us. But if we lack the experience that we need, the context for our work is going to be immature at the end of the day. So we need skills, we need experience, and we need motivation, which raises the question, where does that motivation come from? And what is it that drives motivation in us? Well, this is the question that my colleagues and I have been asking for the last several years. And in the new book, The Motivation Code, we articulated research that has been conducted over the course of 50 years, began over 50 years ago with some leaders from some of the biggest organizations in the world and people from all walks of life. Over 100,000 interviews have been conducted and analyzed over 1 million achievement stories to figure out what are the unique themes that drive engagement, that drive satisfaction, and that animate us to act even in the face of discomfort. What is it that causes us to feel deep engagement, deep satisfaction, and the drive to act? Now, when we tend to think about motivation, most of us have heard these phrases before. We think about extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. These are typically the two types of motivation that we consider. Extrinsic motivation being external factors, right? Things like pay raises or words of encouragement, or even sometimes the stick, right? Fear, I'm going to fire you if you don't do your job. That's kind of an extrinsic motivator because it's something outside of us that we think of that is motivating us to behave in a certain way. And then we think about what we call intrinsic motivators. And intrinsic motivators are the things that are inside of us, the things that drive us uniquely to want to accomplish something, to want to have some kind of an impact, to want to experience something. And this is what often is involved in what we call self-determination theory, which is research that came out of the 1970s and on that talks about the importance of autonomy and relatedness and connectedness and all of these factors that drive us intrinsically. But what the research also showed that often isn't articulated clearly is that extrinsic and intrinsic motivation don't exist in a complete vacuum. They don't exist exclusively in mutually exclusive categories. That intrinsic and extrinsic motivation actually modify one another. How I intrinsically respond to extrinsic stimulus is going to be different from the way that you do. And the way you do is going to be different than the way I do, meaning that we each have unique ways in which we respond to the stimulus around us. We each have unique motivation, a unique motivational blueprint. So the way that we got to understanding this is by analyzing what we call achievement stories. So think of a time when you accomplished something meaningful. Think of a time when you were able to do something that other people around you thought was crazy, or that maybe other people didn't understand, and yet to you it was deeply meaningful, deeply satisfying. And to this day, it still resonates with you. It could be, on your high school basketball team, you were a standout in one game. It could be that you were part of a team that just really clicked. And for some reason, that to this day still is just one of your fondest memories and one of your most animating and motivating memories of a successful season in your life. See, we each have these stories of moments in our life when we achieve something significant, and we all remember what that meant to us, but we often gloss over that. We don't pay attention to the themes of those high points in our life. And what we discovered is by analyzing the themes in those moments, like we did in over the a million achievement stories, what we can do is we can begin to distill those moments and our description of those moments into a series of patterns. And those patterns are what we call motivation code. Your motivation code is the combination of top themes that drive deep engagement, that drive the spending of discretionary energy, and it's unique to each of us. Your motivation code is the unique, sustained, unchanging drive that is the source of your deepest engagement. Unique, meaning that it's unique to you. There are 17,550 possible combinations of top three themes. When we talk about motivation code, I'm going to share the themes with you in just a minute, but there's 17,550 possible combinations, meaning if you're on a team with several other people, the odds of each of you being animated and motivated by the same things is very, very slim, right? Sustained, meaning that this is going to be true of you whether you're at work, whether you're with your family, whether you're doing something in your personal life, you're leading some sort of nonprofit initiative. Like, it doesn't matter. What drives you is consistent from situation to situation. It's not situational. And what we also discovered is it's largely unchanging, meaning we've had people that we've assessed over the course of time who have taken this assessment. What we've discovered is that when they were assessed the first time, when they were assessed the second time, even if it was years apart, there might be some variability in terms of how the top themes are ordered, but generally they're motivated by the same things today that motivated them years ago. So what we discovered is that there are actually 27 unique themes of motivation, and these unique themes live in families. Now, the real value lives at the theme level when we talk about what it is that uniquely drives us, animates us. But there are also families, meaning that there are some themes that kind of share DNA with some of the other themes. And so we put these into families because just like you share biological DNA with your biological sibling, you're still very different. You have different personalities, different way you approach life, but you still share a little bit of DNA. There's some similarity there. And so that's kind of how these families and themes hold together as well. So let me share with you the families and the themes. So there are 6 families, as I mentioned: the visionary family, the achiever family, the team player family, the learner family, the optimizer family, the key contributor family. So the visionary family of themes, the commonality here is that they're typically thinking about the future. They're really engaged and animated when they're envisioning some potential possible future outcome. So this includes themes like achieve potential, which is somebody who really is driven to try to squeeze the value out of something, to really achieve the fullest potential of an idea, or make an impact, who wants it, which by the way is my number one, which is somebody who wants to see the tangible impact of the work that they do. When that impact isn't there, they're just not motivated to engage. Or experience the ideal, somebody who wants to see the ideal form of something. So they're the ones who are constantly trying to get everything right. They're always trying to move things toward what is possible. Okay. Then you have the achiever family. These are people who want to move the ball down the field. This includes themes like meet the challenge, overcome, bring to completion, advance. Team player families, you can imagine these are people who like being around others. They want to collaborate. They want to work in a team context. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Then there's the learner family. The learner family, as you can imagine, wants to learn things. They want to explore. They want to teach. They want to be somebody who's out there always on the edge, trying to sharpen their understanding of the world. The optimizer family. Optimizers are people who want to squeeze efficiency out of things. They want to make things better. So they're the kind of people who are always saying, we can do better. We can improve that. We can make it work, right? We can make it what it needs to be. And then you have the key contributor family. And these are people who like to be close to the center of action. They want to be in a role where you can see that they're the ones making things happen. Now, here's why this is really interesting. When you have people who are motivated by different themes, collaborating on a team, often this is a source of great conflict on your team. So imagine you have somebody who's primarily driven to explore, and you have somebody else who's primarily driven to bring to completion, and they're on the same team together. Well, early in the project, the bring to completion person is going to be saying, we need to get this done. We need to check this off a list. We need to move things forward. The explore person is going to be asking a bunch of questions. Why are we doing this? Is this the right thing to do? What if we look at this? Why don't we try that? And there's going to be conflict there. Of course, later in the project, the bring to completion person's trying to get it across the line. The explore person's still going to be motivated to spend that discretionary energy asking questions, exploring new things. Maybe we need to scrap this and start all over again, right? Now, normally we would just say those people just don't get along. But the reality is they're bringing different motivations to the table. Once we begin to understand these motivations and why it is that we behave the way we do and what it is that's driving that expenditure of discretionary energy, we can have more meaningful conversations about how we interact with one another, about how we collaborate, and about how we bring the unique giftedness and motivation of each person to the table each day. All right. So my motivation code, I want to share with you this is my combination of top themes. My top theme is make an impact. As I mentioned, this is about seeing the tangible impact of my work. If I'm working on something and I can't see the tangible impact on the other side, it doesn't drive me nearly as much as if I know I'm going to see a tangible impact on the other side of what I'm doing. So right now, I'm speaking into a camera to you. I love what I get to do, but it's not necessarily as motivating as being on a stage in front of a couple thousand people where I get to see in real time the impact of the work I'm doing. I still love the work because I know it's going to have an impact on the other side. But this has been an interesting season for me. I've had to find other ways of satisfying this motivation to make an impact. Right? My number 2 is meet the challenge, meaning I love concrete, discrete challenges that I can tackle. That's what I love. And so if you want to, and by the way, this is my trigger motivation. If you want me involved in something, just come to me and say, Todd, I don't know if this is possible, but boom, I'm in instantly. Like I'm there because this is the motivation that triggers action for me. That's what triggered my desire to be the first person in line on the cliff, was meet the challenge. In that moment, I said it was like a universal referendum on my manhood. It was like the challenge gauntlet was thrown down. Yes, I'll do it. I don't want to, but I'll do it. I was motivated because I'm triggered by meet the challenge. My number 3 is influence behavior. I want to see other people are being influenced by my thoughts, my actions. So often I'll be talking with people and they'll say, you're saying the same thing over and over. Why do you keep repeating yourself? It's because I'm waiting for them to nod. I'm waiting for them to show me that I'm impacting them in some capacity. And again, this is one of those motivations that's not easily satisfied right now in the midst of this pandemic. And then number 4 for me is overcome. So I want to know that there's some specific concrete force that I'm working against. It's important for me to have something I'm working to overcome in order to feel driven. So I love underdogs. I am animated by underdogs. I love working with David's taking on Goliaths. And I know this about myself. So now that I understand that this is the code that drives me, I can begin to bring more of my unique self to what I do. I am fundamentally motivated to imprint my distinctive signature as I rise to the challenge and change how people feel or think. That is what I'm driven to do. So once you begin to understand this, you can stop wishing you were motivated, which is what many of us do. Why am I not? Why are people not motivated? Why is my team not motivated? Don't wish you were motivated. Bring your motivation to your work. Consider, how can I structure my work so that I'm more motivated? Writing books is something I've written 5 books in 10 years. I don't love to write. I don't. It's not something I enjoy doing. What I've learned about that is I have to structure regular challenges in my life in order to be motivated. So I have to say, I'm going to write 500 words by 9 a.m. this morning. That's a challenge. That motivates me. That animates me in a way that just writing a 60,000 word manuscript doesn't do. Once you begin to understand the themes that drive deep engagement, you can begin to bring that understanding to the work that you do. Okay? The final thought I have for you is this. And by the way, I encourage all of you to go to motivationcode.com and discover your motivation code. It's going to illuminate your understanding of why you do what you do, just like it did for me in very significant ways. Okay. So what kind of fuel are you burning? Listen, we talk about all the time about burning fuel for energy. We talk about things like, hey, go show them what you're made of. All those detractors who in the past have told you you can't do it, go show them what you're made of, right? Prove them wrong. We use things like anger and, all of these things that I think are, we're told to use as motivation, but those kinds of fuels burn dirty. They're not clean fuels. Motivation code is clean fuel because when you understand what it is that really drives you, listen, meet the challenge is a clean fuel. I feel better at the end. I don't leave residue. I feel better when I meet the challenge. I feel better when I experience the impact of the work I'm doing. It's clean fuel versus dirty fuel, which is fuel that's against fuel. It's fuel that is about overcoming or tackling some outside force. Instead of that, when you burn clean fuel, then you're able to bring yourself fully and freely and completely to the work you do in a way that is consistent with how you are wired. You can experience something, the exact same thing that I experience, and have an entirely different perspective and take an entirely different meaning away from it because your motivation code is different from mine. And that's the key insight that unlocks deep engagement, deep satisfaction, and effective collaboration. So friends, I challenge you, don't wait to be motivated. Bring your motivation to what you do every day. Thank you very much. It's been a joy being with you.
I'm really getting good at that, mixing in multiple. What do you think of that, Todd? Pretty good.
I need
That was
that. I need, especially
yeah.
somebody driven to influence behavior, that like really speaks to me. That applause speaks to me. So
I'm going to make that my new ringtone. I'll feel great all day long. Fantastic. Thanks for being with us. That was really awesome. And I know you've done a lot of work and a lot of research and I'm proud to share it. And it's just very, very interesting to us and our attendees here. So we're really, really thankful. We do have a few questions I'd love to filter over your way, if you don't mind.
great.
Okay. So here's a question. How have you seen motivation used in a B2C scenario? You're talking about individual and team performance. Any tips that can be applied to product development?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think is a pitfall for many of us is that we tend to think most of the world is motivated the way that we are motivated, right? So when we're in a B2C environment, we tend to think when we're designing something, we're developing a product, we're developing messaging, whatever that might be, we tend to think about it through the lens of what drives us. So for example, for me, I mentioned overcome as one of my top motivational themes. I tend to think about messaging in terms of oppositional types of messages, right? Like being against or overcoming or conquering or coming against an enemy. Like those are the kinds of messages that fire me up, or those are the kinds of design elements that fire me up. And so I become really engaged with that. The problem is I'm not thinking through the lens of the people that I'm trying to reach. And so simply using those 6 motivational families as a framework to consider, are we taking into account all of the different ways that people might be motivated to respond to our message or to our product or to a particular feature or whatever it is? Are we thinking through the lens of all of those motivations, not just through the one maybe that animates us, can be very helpful in terms of connecting more deeply with the people we're trying to serve.
That's great. And what's also great, I guess, is our next speaker is going to talk a little bit more about those frameworks and things that we use in the design craft around motivation and behavior change. So it'll be a good complementary session, I think, for sure. Okay, a couple other ones here. I think you answered this one. Can this be applied to consider what refuels or recharges someone? Can your method be considered around helping with refueling or recharging?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's really kind of the core of the research. So the motivation code assessment is a story-driven psychometric assessment. It begins with people's stories of moments when they felt engaged, fulfilled, satisfied, recharged would be another way to put that, right? Or charged up by your work, maybe charged up by an activity. And so understanding the themes that tend to give you energy versus drain energy from you is a fantastic way to to think about structuring your life so that you're, if we're consistently doing activities or engaging in behavior that is draining us, that's oppositional to our motivation code, to the places where we get energy, we're more likely to be prematurely drained, right? To lose energy as opposed to feel like we have sort of a net energy at the end of that activity. So absolutely, unquestionably, we've even some of the folks on our team doing research into the connection between motivation code and operating your motivation code and experiencing a flow state, right? That Mihai Csikszentmihalyi researched extensively. And what we're finding is that there's some interesting correlation between operating in your core motivation within those core motivational themes and experiencing the state of flow, which is that state of kind of being
Mm-hmm.
lost in your work.
Yeah,
So it's some
time.
pretty exciting research that's going into this area at the moment.
Awesome. Last one here. I think I know the answer, but is it beneficial to have teams that have a good balance of motivational profiles? So if you had a design team, for example, would it be a good idea to have a good balance of profiles?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we know the research all points to the importance of diversity on really every front in the creative process: diversity of perspective, diversity of experience, diversity of skill set. And I would argue diversity of motivation is important as well,
Mm-hmm.
because when you have people who are driven to advance the project and you have other people who are driven to put the brakes on the project and ask questions and explore and bring all kinds of interesting stimulus into the process, you're going to have conflict, but you're also probably going to have a team that's going to get a lot of things done and probably do them very well. You're not going to leave a lot of avenues unexplored, but you're also not going to leave a lot of half-finished projects in your wake because the people driven to bring to completion are not going to let that happen. So I think diversity of motivation, and that's actually something that our team is, again, putting a lot of research into, is what are the effects of having a diversity of motivation on your team in terms of productivity, engagement, and overall output.
Great. Yep. Agree 100%. So thank you very much, Todd. I hope you can hang around. I know we're going to do some networking in a little bit. I hope you can enjoy the rest of the show, but I just want to thank you for being with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.